The massive throne room of the Draconian Empire stretched endlessly, its obsidian walls reflecting the cold light of distant stars through crystalline windows. Emperor Zarathax sat upon his throne, a mountain of scales and muscle that made even the bravest warriors tremble. His golden eyes, each the size of a shield, surveyed the gathered court with the same emotion he had shown for the past 3,000 years. None. The Dragon Emperor was the most feared being in the known galaxy. His empire spanned 7-star systems, and his name alone could end wars before they began. But there was one thing Emperor Zarathax could not understand, one weakness he saw in the lesser races that populated his domain, their obsession with something called joy. He had witnessed it countless times. The humans with their laughter, the Altarians with their singing crystals, the Zephyrians with their dance of lights. All these displays of happiness seemed pointless to him. Joy was inefficient. Joy was weakness. Joy was something that clouded judgment and made beings vulnerable. Your Majesty. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. Ambassador Chun, the human representative, stepped forward. She was barely the size of one of his claws, yet she stood before him without fear. This was why he tolerated humans. They possessed a strange courage that defied logic. The human colony on Kepler, 442b requests permission to celebrate their winter festival. Chun said, her voice steady despite addressing a being who could incinerate entire fleets with his breath. Denied. Zarathax rumbled, his voice causing the very air to vibrate. Celebrations are a waste of resources. The colony should focus on meeting their production quotas. Chin's face fell, but she nodded respectfully. As you command, Your Majesty. As she turned to leave, another figure entered the throne room. General Krax, Zarathax's most trusted commander, approached with unusual hesitation in his step. My Emperor, Krax said, lowering his head. I bring news from the medical wing. Zarathax's eyes narrowed. The medical wing was where his mate, Seraphina, had been for the past several months. Dragons rarely reproduced, and when they did, it was an event of cosmic significance. Speak, he commanded. The egg has hatched, Your Majesty. You have a daughter. For the first time in centuries, Zarathax felt something stir within his chest. Not joy. He didn't understand joy, but something else. Curiosity, perhaps. He rose from his throne, his movement causing the entire palace to tremble. Take me to her, he ordered. The journey to the medical wing was silent. Guards scrambled out of the way as the Emperor's massive form moved through corridors designed to accommodate his size. When he entered the hatching chamber, he saw Seraphina curled protectively around something small. Zarathax, Seraphina said softly, her silver scales gleaming in the soft light. Come meet your daughter. As he approached, Seraphina moved aside to reveal the tiniest dragon he had ever seen. She was no bigger than a human child, her scales a unique pattern of gold and silver that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her eyes, when they opened, were the deepest blue he had ever seen. What is her name? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. I thought we might call her Luna, Seraphina suggested. After the human word for moon, she seems to glow like one. Zarathax would normally have rejected such a sentimental name, but something about the tiny creature before him made him pause. Luna, he repeated, it is acceptable. The baby dragon looked up at her father and made a small chirping sound. Then, to his utter bewilderment, she smiled. Dragons didn't smile. It wasn't in their nature. Yet here was his daughter, barely hours old, displaying an expression he had only seen on the faces of lesser beings. Why does she do that? He asked, genuinely confused. Seraphina's eyes softened. Perhaps she is happy to meet her father. Happy. Zarathax repeated the word as if it were foreign. Happiness is inefficient. But even as he said it, he found himself unable to look away from Luna's smiling face. He extended one massive claw toward her, and she grabbed onto it with her tiny talons, still smiling that impossible smile. Days turned into weeks, and Zarathax found himself visiting the nursery more often than his duties required. Luna grew quickly, as dragon young do, but she retained that strange ability to smile. Worse, she seemed determined to make others smile too. She would perform little aerial tricks, tumbling through the air in ways that served no practical purpose. She would arrange her treasure hoard not by value or strategic importance, but by color, creating patterns that she claimed were pretty. She would even attempt to sing, producing melodious sounds that were entirely undignified for a dragon. She spends too much time with the human staff, Zarathax complained to Seraphina one day. She's picking up their habits. Perhaps, Seraphina said carefully, that's not entirely a bad thing. Zarathax growled his disagreement, but he didn't forbid Luna from interacting with the humans. Something about her joy, for he had finally admitted to himself that's what it was, made it impossible for him to deny her anything. The real test came when Luna was 6 months old. In dragon years, this made her equivalent to a human child of about 5. She had discovered the human concept of gifts and had become obsessed with the idea. "Papa," she said one day, using the human term she had picked up despite his attempts to make her use the proper draconian title. "The humans have something called Christmas. They give each other presents to show love. Dragons do not need such displays," Zarathax replied automatically. "Our strength speaks for itself." Luna's face fell, her smile disappearing for the first time since he'd known her. The sight of it caused an uncomfortable sensation in his chest, as if something was squeezing his heart. "But, Papa," she said quietly, "I wanted to give you something. I have entire planets under my command," he said, trying to sound stern but failing. "What could you possibly give me that I don't already possess?" Luna didn't answer. She simply flew away, her usual bounce gone from her movements. Zarathax told himself it didn't matter. He had an empire to run. He didn't have time for sentimental nonsense. But as the days passed and Luna remained subdued, he found himself distracted. His advisors noticed his lack of focus during meetings. His generals commented on his unusual irritability. Even Seraphina seemed to be giving him disapproving looks. "What?" he finally snapped at his mate. "You hurt her feelings," Seraphina said simply. "She only wanted to show you love in a way she understood." "Love doesn't require gifts," Zarathax protested. "It requires strength, protection, providing for one's family." "Perhaps," Seraphina said, "love requires different things for different beings. And our daughter, whether you like it or not, seems to have inherited a heart capable of joy." Zarathax brooded on this for days. He had united warring systems, conquered planets, and built an empire that would last millennia. But he couldn't understand why his daughter's sadness bothered him so much. It was Ambassador Chun who finally provided insight. She had come for a routine meeting, but Zarathax found himself asking her an unexpected question. "Human," he said, "explain this Christmas to me." Chin's eyes widened in surprise, but she recovered quickly. "It's a celebration of love and generosity, Your Majesty. Families come together, share meals, and exchange gifts. But the gifts themselves aren't what matters. It's the thought behind them, the desire to bring joy to others." "Joy again," Zarathax muttered. "Why are your people so obsessed with joy?" Chin smiled sadly. "Because joy makes the hardships bearable, Your Majesty. It reminds us why we struggle and survive. It connects us to each other." After she left, Zarathax sat alone in his throne room, thinking. He had spent 3,000 years building his empire on strength and fear. But his daughter had shown him something different in just 6 months of life. She had shown him that perhaps there was strength in joy too. That night, he made a decision that would have shocked his court if they had known. He would allow Luna to give him a Christmas gift. More than that, he would try to understand why it mattered to her. He found Luna in her room, half-heartedly sorting through her treasure collection. When she saw him, she didn't smile, which bothered him more than he cared to admit. "Luna," he said, his voice gentler than usual. "I've been thinking about what you said, about Christmas gifts." She looked up at him, hope flickering in her blue eyes. "Really, Papa?" "Yes," he said, the word feeling strange but not unpleasant. "If you wish to give me a gift, I will accept it." The transformation was instantaneous. Luna's face lit up with such pure joy that Zarathax felt that strange, squeezing sensation in his chest again. She launched herself at him, wrapping her small wings around his massive neck in what the humans called a hug. "Oh, Papa, I already made it. I'll go get it." She flew off in a flurry of excitement, leaving Zarathax standing there, bewildered by the warmth spreading through his chest. Was this what the humans felt? This strange, inefficient, completely illogical warmth? When Luna returned, she was carrying something behind her back, her whole body practically vibrating with excitement. "Close your eyes, Papa." "Dragons don't close their eyes," he said automatically, then saw her face start to fall. "But I suppose I could make an exception." He closed his massive golden eyes, feeling oddly vulnerable. He heard Luna approach, felt her small presence near his claw. "Okay, you can open them." When he opened his eyes, he saw Luna holding up a small object. It was a scale, one of her own silver-gold scales, that had been carefully polished and attached to a chain large enough to fit around one of his claws. "I made it myself," she said proudly. "Well, the human crafters helped me with the chain, but the scale is mine. Now you can carry a piece of me wherever you go, even when you're being all emperor-y and scary." Zarathax stared at the simple gift. In his treasure vaults, he had gems the size of buildings, crowns from fallen kingdoms, artifacts of immense power. But somehow, this single scale from his daughter seemed more valuable than all of them combined. Emperor Zarathax sat in his private chamber, staring at the small scale pendant that hung from his claw. 3 days had passed since Luna had given him her Christmas gift, and in those 3 days, something fundamental had shifted in the Dragon Empire. It started small. The Emperor had been seen wearing the pendant during court sessions. His advisors pretended not to notice, but whispers spread through the palace like wildfire. The fearsome Dragon Emperor, who had never shown sentiment in 3 millennia, was wearing a child's handmade gift. Luna, of course, was oblivious to the political implications. She had taken her father's acceptance of her gift as permission to share her joy with everyone in the palace. She flew through the corridors, teaching ancient dragon guards how to play human games. She convinced the kitchen staff to let her help prepare meals, adding what she called happy spices, which turned out to be nothing more than arrangements that made the food look more appealing. "Your Majesty," General Krax approached during a military briefing. "The troops have noticed your accessory." Zarathax's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do they have opinions about it, General?" Krax shifted uncomfortably. "They're curious, my lord. Some of the younger dragons have been asking if they too might be permitted to engage in this Christmas celebration." "Absolutely not," Zarathax growled. "One exception does not change 3,000 years of tradition." But even as he said it, he found his claw moving to touch the scale pendant. Luna had been so happy when she saw him wearing it that morning. She had done that peculiar bouncing flight pattern that served no purpose except to express joy. Later that day, an urgent matter arose. The Vorthan Confederacy, an alliance of warrior races, had been making aggressive moves toward the Empire's borders. Normally, Zarathax would have responded with an immediate show of force. But as he sat in the war room, planning the Empire's response, Luna wandered in. "Papa, are you busy?" she asked, her small head peeking around the massive door. "I am planning the subjugation of an enemy force," he replied. "So yes, I am busy." Instead of leaving, Luna flew up and perched on the edge of the war table, examining the holographic displays with curious eyes. "Why are they enemies?" "Because they threaten our borders." "But why do they threaten our borders?" Zarathax paused. It was a simple question, but he realized he didn't have a simple answer. "Because they want our resources. Why don't we share?" Every general in the room froze. Suggesting the Dragon Empire share its resources was tantamount to treason. But coming from the Emperor's daughter, in her innocent voice, it somehow didn't sound treasonous. It sounded logical. "We don't share because sharing is weakness," Zarathax explained patiently. Luna tilted her head, a gesture she had picked up from the humans. "But, Papa, when I shared my favorite crystal with Mira was a young human servant. She shared her drawing tools with me." Now we both have more fun things. That doesn't seem weak. That's different, Zarathax said, but he found himself struggling to explain why. General Krax cleared his throat. Perhaps, Your Majesty, we could explore diplomatic options before launching an attack. The Vorthons are known to be reasonable when approached correctly. Zarathax stared at his general in disbelief. Krax, who had won 100 battles, was suggesting diplomacy? But, as he looked at Luna, who was now using her tail to draw smiley faces in the dust on the table, he found himself considering it. Fine, he growled. Send an ambassador. But prepare the fleet in case they refuse. The meeting adjourned, and Luna flew up to nuzzle against her father's jaw. You're the best papa in the whole galaxy, she declared. I'm the only papa you know, he pointed out. Then, you're definitely the best one, she replied with flawless child logic. That evening, Zarathax found himself in an unusual position. Luna had convinced him to join her for what she called story time, another human custom she had adopted. She curled up against his massive form while one of the human servants read from a book of tales. This is undignified, Zarathax muttered. Papa, this is a good part, Luna whispered back. The story was about a lonely king who discovered that wealth and power meant nothing without someone to share them with. Zarathax suspected the human servant had chosen it deliberately, but he found himself listening despite his reservations. When the story ended, Luna was already half asleep. Papa, she murmured, are you lonely? The question caught him off guard. Dragons don't get lonely. We are solitary by nature. But you have Mama and me now, Luna pointed out sleepily. So maybe dragons can be not lonely too. As she drifted off to sleep, Zarathax remained awake, thinking. He had never considered himself lonely. He had been focused on building his empire, on maintaining order and strength. But now, with Luna's small form breathing peacefully against his side, he wondered if perhaps he had been missing something all along. The next morning brought unexpected news. The Vorthon Confederacy had agreed to negotiations. More surprisingly, they had mentioned that they were impressed by the Emperor's new approach to governance. What new approach? Zarathax demanded of Ambassador Chun, who had delivered the message. Chun smiled carefully. Word has spread, Your Majesty, about certain changes in the palace. The pendant you wear, your daughter's influence. Some see it as a sign that the Dragon Empire might be entering a new era. Preposterous, Zarathax rumbled. I'm the same emperor I have always been. But, even as he said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true. Just that morning, he had caught himself almost smiling when Luna had presented him with a breakfast surprise, his usual meal arranged to look like a flower. As days turned into weeks, the changes became more noticeable. Luna had befriended not just the palace staff, but also the visiting dignitaries. She had a gift for making others feel welcome, for finding common ground between species that had been at odds for centuries. During one memorable incident, a heated negotiation between the Crystalline Collective and the Meteor Miners Guild was on the verge of collapse. Luna had wandered into the conference room, took one look at the angry delegates, and declared that everyone needed a joy break. Before Zarathax could stop her, she had organized an impromptu talent show. The sight of hardened negotiators attempting to juggle or tell jokes should have been mortifying. Instead, it broke the tension. By the end of the day, both sides had reached an agreement. How does she do it? Zarathax asked Seraphina one night. She sees the good in everyone, his mate replied. She doesn't look at them as potential enemies or allies. She just sees beings who might be friends. That's naive, Zarathax protested. Is it? Seraphina challenged. Your empire has never been more stable. Trade is up, conflicts are down, and all because our daughter spreads joy wherever she goes. Zarathax couldn't argue with the facts, but he struggled to accept the implications. His entire worldview was being challenged by a dragon who barely came up to his knee. The real test came when Luna announced she wanted to throw a Christmas party for the entire palace. Not just the dragons, but every species that worked there, humans, Altarians, Zephyrians, even the silicon-based Chronox from the kitchens. Absolutely not, Zarathax said immediately. Dragons do not throw parties. Luna's face fell, but she didn't give up. Please, Papa. It would make everyone so happy. And happy workers are good workers, right? That's efficient. Zarathax stared at his daughter. She was trying to use his own logic against him. The worst part was that it was working. You've been talking to Ambassador Chan, he accused. Luna grinned, showing all her baby teeth. She's teaching me about diplomacy. Over the next few days, Luna launched what could only be described as a campaign. She didn't whine or throw tantrums. Instead, she strategically placed evidence of joy throughout the palace. She arranged the guards to find small gifts in their posts. Nothing valuable, just thoughtful tokens. A warming stone for the guard who stood in the coldest corridor, a collection of jokes for the one who always looked stern. She organized the kitchen staff to prepare everyone's favorite meals on the same day, so the entire palace smelled like 100 different homes. She even convinced the usually stoic dragon guards to help her decorate, claiming it was practice for tactical camouflage. Zarathax watched all of this with a mixture of exasperation and something else, pride perhaps. His daughter was displaying strategic thinking worthy of a general, except her goal was spreading happiness instead of conquering territories. Your daughter is quite persuasive, General Krax commented, a string of lights wrapped around his tail as he helped with decorations. She gets that from her mother, Zarathax replied, though he suspected that wasn't entirely true. Luna's combination of determination and joy was uniquely her own. Finally, the day before the proposed party, Zarathax called Luna to his throne room. She flew in, trying to look serious but unable to hide the hope in her eyes. This party, he began, his voice stern. If I were to allow it, and I'm not saying I will, there would need to be rules. Luna nadidigirli. Of course, Papa. No one shirks their duties. The party happens after all work is complete. Yes, Papa. Security protocols remain in place. No one knows that I eat the guests. Absolutely, Papa. And Zarathax paused, searching for more objections. But, looking at Luna's eager face, her scale pendant catching the light as she bounced slightly in anticipation, he found his resolve weakening. And you must promise that this won't become a regular occurrence, he finished weakly. Luna's squeal of delight could probably be heard 3 systems away. She launched herself at her father, wrapping her wings around as much of him as she could reach. Thank you, Papa. It's going to be wonderful. Everyone's going to be so happy. As she flew off to spread the news, Zarathax touched the scale pendant on his claw. 3 weeks ago, he would have said that happiness was inefficient, joy was weakness. But watching his daughter had taught him something else. Joy was connection. Joy was the bridge between species that had never understood each other. Joy was what made loyalty based on love stronger than loyalty based on fear. The Dragon Emperor still didn't fully understand joy, but for his daughter, for the light in her eyes and the smile on her face, he was willing to learn. The palace of the Dragon Empire had never seen anything like it. Lights twinkled from every surface, reflected 1,000 times over by the obsidian walls. The Great Hall, which had hosted countless war councils and judgment sessions, was transformed into something that could only be described as magical. Emperor Zarathax stood in the shadows of his own throne room, watching the chaos unfold. Dragons, humans, and a dozen other species mingled freely, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. And at the center of it all was Luna, his daughter, orchestrating the impossible with the skill of a seasoned diplomat and the enthusiasm of the child she was. Papa, you're hiding. Luna's voice rang out as she spotted him. She flew over, wearing a ridiculous pointed hat that the humans had assured her was traditional Christmas wear. I'm not hiding, Zarathax rumbled. I'm observing. Same thing, Luna declared with the confidence only a young dragon could possess. Come on, everyone wants to see you enjoy the party. Emperors do not enjoy parties, he replied automatically, but he allowed her to lead him into the light. The reaction was immediate. Conversations stuttered to a halt as various beings noticed their imposing ruler approaching. But Luna wouldn't allow the awkwardness to settle. Everyone, Papa's here. Now we can do the gift exchange. Gift exchange. Zarathax's eyes narrowed. You said nothing about a gift exchange. Luna grinned mischievously. It's a surprise. Everyone brought something to share. Not expensive things, she added quickly, seeing his expression. Just small tokens. Things that mean something. Before Zarathax could protest, Ambassador Chin approached with a small wrapped package. Your Majesty, I hope you don't mind. When Luna explained the tradition, we all wanted to participate. Zarathax stared at the package as if it might explode. In 3,000 years, no one had ever given him a gift that wasn't tribute or appeasement. This was different. This was personal. Open it, Papa. Luna inquired. With claws designed for rending armor, Zarathax carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a simple wooden frame containing a piece of paper. On it was a child's drawing, clearly done by one of the human children in the colony. It showed a large dragon and a small dragon flying together among stars. The children in the colony wanted to thank you, Chin explained softly, for allowing them to celebrate their traditions. This is from Little Mai. She said the big dragon is protecting everyone, and the small dragon is teaching everyone how to smile. Zarathax stared at the drawing, something tightening in his chest. A child he had never met had drawn him not as a fearsome emperor, but as a protector, and Luna as a teacher of joy. Papa, are you okay? Luna asked, noticing his stillness. I am processing, he managed. The gift exchange continued, and Zarathax found himself receiving more offerings. General Krax gave him a battle plan, but instead of military strategy, it detailed a strategic approach to maximizing celebration efficiency. Even the stoic general had developed a sense of humor. The Crystalline Collective ambassador presented him with a small crystal that hummed with harmonics. It resonates at the frequency of laughter, she explained. We thought it appropriate. Even the kitchen staff had prepared something, a cake in the shape of the palace, with a tiny dragon on top wearing a pendant just like his. But the most surprising gift came from the Vorthan delegation, who had arrived just days before for continued negotiations. Their leader, a warrior named Thrax who had once been Zarathax's enemy, stepped forward with a heavy tome. What is this? Zarathax asked, examining the ancient book. It is our history, Thrax replied. The real history, not the propaganda. We wanted you to understand us, as we are learning to understand you. Your daughter taught us that understanding begins with sharing. Zarathax looked at Luna, who was beaming with pride. When did you speak with the Vorthans? Oh, I've been visiting them during their stay, she said casually. They were really grumpy at first, but then I showed them my flying tricks, and they taught me their war dance, except we made a happy dance instead, and you taught their war dance to my daughter. Zarathax interrupted, looking at Thrax with something between outrage and disbelief. Thrax actually chuckled, a sound like grinding stone. She taught us that our dances could be for joy as well as battle. It was educational. The evening continued with more surprises. The palace guards performed a synchronized flying routine that Luna had choreographed. The kitchen staff sang songs from their various home worlds, creating an unlikely harmony. Even some of the older dragons, who had initially resisted all this nonsense, were seen tapping their claws to the rhythm. But the moment that truly changed everything came near the end of the evening. Luna stood before the assembled crowd, her small form dwarfed by the beings around her, and called for attention. I wanted to thank everyone for making this the best Christmas ever, she began, her young voice carrying clearly through the hall. But I also wanted to share why this matters so much. She looked directly at her father. Papa taught me that strength is important, that protecting our empire and our people is the most important job of all. And he's right. But Mama taught me that there are different kinds of strength. And all of you taught me that joy makes us stronger together than we could ever be alone. She pulled out a small box from behind her back. So I made something for everyone. Well, the crafters helped, but it was my idea. She began distributing small pendants, each one unique. They weren't made of precious metals or gems, but of simple materials: wood, stone, crystal, metal, each carved with a symbol that seemed to represent the recipient. These are unity pendants, Luna explained. Each one is different, just like all of us. But see, she held up her own pendant, and it began to glow softly. As others put theirs on, they began to glow too, creating a constellation of gentle lights throughout the hall. When we're together, when we share our joy, we all shine brighter, Luna said simply. Zarathax looked around the hall at the glowing pendants, at the faces of beings who had been strangers or enemies now smiling at each other. His empire had been built on fear and strength, but his daughter was building something else entirely, a community built on joy and understanding. Your Majesty. Ambassador Chin approached him quietly. I thought you should know. Word of tonight's celebration has already spread. 3 different systems have requested permission to hold similar events. And the Vorthan Confederacy has proposed making the peace treaty permanent. Because of a party? Zarathax asked, incredulous. Because of what the party represents, Chun corrected gently. That the Dragon Empire values not just strength, but the well-being of all its citizens. That joy and culture are not weaknesses to be suppressed, but strengths to be celebrated. Zarathax was about to respond when Luna flew up to him, holding a special pendant. Unlike the others, this one was made from 2 materials twisted together, obsidian and starlight crystal. This one's for you, Papa, she said softly, so only he could hear. The obsidian is for your strength, and the crystal is for the joy you're learning to find. Because you're both the mighty emperor and my papa who accepts Christmas gifts. Zarathax took the pendant with claws that trembled slightly. Luna, He started, then stopped. How could he explain that she had changed not just him, but potentially the entire trajectory of his empire? I know, Papa, Luna said, as if reading his thoughts. You don't have to say it. Just word sometimes, okay. As Zarathax fastened the pendant next to Luna's scale, 2 gifts from his daughter, both precious beyond measure, he made a decision. Attention, all citizens of the Dragon Empire, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of 3,000 years of rule. The hall fell silent immediately. Tonight, my daughter has taught me something that I, in all my years, failed to understand. Strength comes in many forms. The strength to conquer is important, yes. But the strength to unite, to find common ground, to create joy where there was none, this too is power. He looked down at Luna, whose eyes were wide with surprise. Therefore, I hereby declare that this winter celebration, this Christmas, as the humans call it, shall be recognized as an official holiday of the Dragon Empire. Not mandatory, he added quickly, seeing some of the traditional dragons shift uncomfortably, but welcomed and supported for any who wished to participate. The cheer that erupted was deafening. Luna launched herself at her father, tears of joy streaming down her scales. Around them, beings who had never imagined they could celebrate together embraced, laughed, and shared in the moment. Papa, Luna whispered against his neck, you just gave the best gift of all. What gift? He asked, though he suspected he knew. You gave everyone permission to be happy, she said simply. As the celebration continued around them, Zarathax held his daughter close and reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 3 months ago, he had despised joy, seen it as weakness and inefficiency. He had ruled through fear alone, believing it was the only way to maintain order. But a tiny dragon with an impossible smile had changed everything. She had shown him that joy was not the opposite of strength. It was a different kind of strength altogether. It was the strength to be vulnerable, to connect, to admit that even a 3,000-year-old emperor could learn and grow. Papa, Luna said sleepily as the evening wound down. Are you happy? Zarathax considered the question. Happy. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. Was he happy? He thought about his empire, more stable now than it had been in centuries. He thought about the alliances being forged not through threat, but through understanding. He thought about the palace that now rang with laughter as often as it echoed with commands. Most of all, he thought about the small dragon in his arms, who had given him the greatest gift of all, Not just the scale pendant or the unity pendant, but the ability to feel joy itself. "Yes, Luna," he said, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the Dragon Emperor smiled. "I am happy." Luna smiled back, her eyes already closing. "Good. That's all I wanted for Christmas." As Zarathax carried his sleeping daughter back to her chambers, passing through halls still glowing with celebration lights, he realized that his empire would never be the same. The Dragon Emperor who had despised joy was gone, transformed by a daughter's love and a simple Christmas gift. In his place stood something new, still strong, still protective, but now also capable of the greatest strength of all, the strength to embrace joy, to share it, and to let it light the way forward for all the beings under his protection. The pendant at his claw caught the light as he moved, Luna's scale and the Unity pendant side by side, symbols of a new era for the Dragon Empire. An era where strength and joy were not opposites, but partners, where a smile could be as powerful as a roar, and where a little dragon's wish for her father's happiness could transform the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, word spread of the Dragon Emperor who learned to smile, and the daughter who taught an empire how to find joy. It became a legend, a story told across star systems, of how the greatest power in the universe was conquered not by armies or weapons, but by a child's love and a Christmas gift that melted a heart frozen for 3 millennia. The Dragon Empire still stood strong, but now it also stood joyful, and that, as Luna would say, was the best gift of all.